Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, November 30th edition of the Planning Commission. We are here tonight. And Adam, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Start with Commissioner Metcalf.
Here.
Commissioner Bundy.
Here.
Chairman Chase.
Yes.
And Commissioner Bendel.
Here.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Sure.
That's great. Thank you very much. So at this point in every meeting, we open the meeting to public comment for that which is not on tonight's agenda. You may email a comment into publiccomment@tcmmail.org if you have something that is not on tonight's agenda for which you'd like to speak. This is open very briefly, but if you have comment, we have a clock running for 3 minutes to allow you to speak. Any emails, Tracy?
I don't see any. Check again. No emails, Chair Chase.
And no hands up.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll close that public comment section of tonight's agenda, and we'll move directly to the consent calendar. So tonight, there's a resolution pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, making findings and authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the Planning Commission pursuant to the direction of the Town Council and Brown Act provisions. So at this point, we can see if any member of the public or any member of the commission wishes to comment or pull this item. Seeing none, then we can open it, make sure that it's open. People understand if they want to comment on this, they can. They can raise their hand if they want to comment on this item, which allows us to continue operating via Zoom and so forth. I would bet we don't have any public comment on this at this point, Tracy.
Sir.
So we can take it back and ask for a motion on this.
So moved.
Second. Anybody going to make a second? If not? Okay, you're muted, Margaret, but I saw your lips moving.
Okay.
So, okay, we'll go ahead and take a roll call on
I'll
this.
do a quick roll call here. Commissioner Bundy.
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Yes.
Commissioner Bendel.
Yes.
Vice Chair Metcalf.
Yes.
Chairman Chase.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So we can move directly to our new hearings. So the first item on tonight's agenda is a veterinarian's office uses in the C3 Highway Commercial Zoning District. This is entitled Consideration and Possible Recommendation to the Corte Madera Town Council regarding zoning ordinance amendments to amend portions of the Chapter 18.12 C commercial districts, including Section 18.12.020 permitted and conditional uses in commercial districts and 18.12.400 purpose of the Corte Madera Municipal Code to add veterinarians' offices as a permitted use in the C3 Highway Commercial Zoning District. So, Tracy Haggerty, this is your item to present.
Thank you, Chair Chase. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a public hearing for an application to amend the town zoning ordinance to add veterinarian's office uses as a permitted use in the C3 Highway Commercial Zoning District. The application was initiated by the owner of 200 Nellen Avenue. The property owner would like to lease the vacant lower level tenant retail space at 200 Nellen Avenue to a veterinarian's office, Larkspur Landing Veterinary Hospital. 200 Nellen Avenue is zoned C3 Highway Commercial, and veterinarians' offices are neither a permitted use nor a conditionally permitted use within C3. And as some background And you may recall in 2017, the Planning Commission approved the construction of a new 8,000 square foot, 2-story mixed use commercial building at 200 Nellen Avenue. Construction of that building was finished in 2020. And the anticipated uses at the time of its approval were office on the top floor and retail at the bottom. The second floor is partially occupied by the owner's administrative offices, and all 4 of the retail tenant bays on the first floor are vacant. And of course, the immediate effect of the proposed zoning ordinance amendment is that the vet office could be allowed to operate at 200 Nellen Avenue. And of course, the proposed ordinance amendment is not specific just to 200 Nellen Avenue site. The proposed amendment would add veterinarian offices as a permitted use for all parcels zoned C3 highway commercial. Shown here in dark orange with a yellow outline are the limited number of properties, approximately 20, that are zone C3 highway commercial, all in close proximity to Highway 101 here at the north end and sort of in the middle interchange of Corte Madera. And as I said, the proposed amendments would apply to all parcels zoned C3. This is the use as listed in 18-12020, permitted and conditional uses in commercial district. It sets forth, that section sets forth the wide variety of uses that are permitted or conditionally permitted in the 4 commercial districts. The section allows veterinarians as a permitted use only in the C4 commercial service district, specifically using the language that's shown on this slide, that quoted paragraph. Veterinarians' offices are neither permitted nor conditionally permitted in C1 local shopping, C2 regional shopping, or the C3 highway commercial districts. And let me back up. I'll show you where C4 is. C4 is this bright pink area. Over here, it's dominated by some semi-industrial uses, storage yards, rental yards, of the existing vet in Corte Madera. BC Madera is located over here, and several auto dealerships also. So just discussing where veterinarians are allowed currently in the C4 commercial service district. Permitted uses in C4 include land intensive quasi industrial uses such as those listed here on this slide. Automobile sales and service agencies, contractors, equipment rental and storage yards, storage warehouses are permitted uses in C4, including veterinarians' offices. Many of these uses, including vets, have been a permitted use in C4 since adoption of the town's zoning ordinance in 1958. And at that time, these types of commercial service establishments were referred to as semi-industrial in character. C3 uses also include the same or similar semi-industrial uses such as automobile sales and service, rental hand tools, garden tools, paint wallpaper stores, and the like. Those examples are shown here on the left. The C3 differs from C4 in that it also includes uses that are commonly small scale and service or retail oriented in nature. Some examples are shown here on the right-hand column, and they serve categories of patrons that align more closely really with personal service or retail establishments than those on the left. And they're also permitted in C2 regional shopping and C1 local shopping districts as well. And this is not all of the list of uses in C3. A complete list is attachment 2 to your staff report. Permitted and conditionally permitted uses are all listed there. It's a 2-page attachment. Again, that's attachment 2 to the staff report. And a present day veterinarian office is not agricultural or industrial in character. I'll show you some photographic examples of some present day offices, nor do they require extensive land associated historically maybe with how town staff originally considered veterinarians for the C4 zone only. And additionally, our veterinarian use currently states that they must operate entirely within an enclosed building and allow only short-term boarding of animals. As outlined in the staff report, present day veterinarians are well suited to kind of coexist within this wide range of uses from semi-industrial to retail that are presently allowed in the C3. As I said, similar to other uses in C3, a vet's office is locally and regionally serving. It benefits from convenient access to the freeway. Its character and scale is comparable to the personal service and retail type of establishments that are already allowed by right in the C3 district. And these photos show just some examples of modern day veterinarians offices that are located close to the freeway that serve Central and Southern Marin. On the left is an office in Mill Valley, just at the Tiburon exit. On the right is the Larkspur Landing vet at Larkspur Landing Circle in Larkspur. Another example, this is the vet located currently in Corte Madera on Paradise Drive, and on the right, Pet Emergency and Specialty Center, East Francisco Boulevard, San Rafael. And lastly, another example, Marin Pet Hospital on Francisco Boulevard west of 101 in San Rafael again. Staff evaluated anticipated automobile trips that would be generated by veterinarians' offices. And according to the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual, trip rates for a veterinary clinic are 21.5 daily trips per 1,000 square feet of floor area. Comparatively, strip retail plaza is 54.5 roughly daily trips per 1,000 square feet of floor area. And so retail uses, many of which are allowed in C3, generate approximately 250 more automobile trips than veterinarian uses. And so introducing veterinarian uses into that mix of uses permitted in C3 is appropriate, would not create more traffic volume than the uses that are currently permitted. Corte Madera Municipal Code 18-20030 sets forth the parking requirements for a wide variety of uses. A veterinarian's office is not specifically listed in that parking section. And so at the bottom of the slide, I've provided some examples of parking requirements. Since a veterinarian use is not listed in the parking schedule, code states that it should be parked for the most similar use. And given that a vet is similar to the personal service or retail, I've listed office, such as psychiatrists or therapists as well here, but generates fewer vehicle trips based on the trip generation manual, and it could be inferred that it would not generate a higher parking demand than the uses that are presently permitted in the C3 district. Let's skip the slide. Shown here is the proposed amendment to section 18.12.020, permitted and conditional uses in commercial districts. It's a table of uses with an X marking permitted and a blank not permitted. The additions are shown in blue underline. Deletions are shown in red strikeout. The proposed ordinance would also remove a portion of the existing use description that requires Planning Commission to review and determine soundproof construction materials or methods for a veterinarian's office. And the reason for this change is that operation of a permitted use is not subject to discretionary review, and therefore it's not and has not been feasible for the Planning Commission to prescribe soundproof construction specifications on a case-by-case basis for any veterinarian office that operates in an existing building. Any need for sound attenuation materials or methods for an existing or proposed veterinarian office should be addressed on the landlord-tenant level and through the tenant improvement process. A veterinarian office is required, and it would, these changes would not remove. It is required to provide all operations in are conducted entirely within a completely enclosed building, and in addition, only short-term boarding of animals is allowed. And these requirements ensure that this particular use operates in reasonable balance with the spectrum of uses that are permitted in the C3 district. This slide shows the proposed amendment to the purpose section of the C4 commercial service district. It's 18.12400. Again, the additions are shown in blue underline. The deletions are shown in red strikeout. In this section, the purpose section of C4 includes veterinarians as an establishment representative of the C4 district. And this proposed ordinance would remove the word veterinarians from this section, since it's not exemplary solely of this zoning district, and is not a good example of a land intensive larger scale uses such as the automobile dealers, building material sales, and the home improvement sales that are listed as the other examples for this particular district in this particular section. And furthermore, you know, the operations of present day veterinarians don't include the types of nuisances, maybe noise and odor, that have been associated historically when the town originally thought about how to zone or where to classify it a veterinarian back in 1958. There are specific findings that are required in order for the Planning Commission to recommend the addition of a permitted use or conditional use to the list of those that are prescribed for any zoning district, and staff is able to make all those findings, which you'll find in the resolution and in the ordinance. That's attachment 1 to the staff report. So specifically, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt resolution 21-020 attachment 1, recommending that the town council approve the amendments to portions of 18.12C commercial districts. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, obviously. And as I mentioned, the property owner of 200 Ellen, who initiated this application for C3 zone properties, Sebastian Jakovitz, is on the call if there's questions for him. And then his prospective tenant, Dr. Press of the Larkspur Landing Veterinary Hospital, is also on this call and available for any questions that you might have related to the operations of a veterinary practice.
Thank you, Tracy.
Welcome.
Very thorough. So at this point, I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you. So Jim, do you have any questions for Tracy?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to, I was emailing Tracy earlier today, and she had made my question to her earlier today, and she had answered it, was if there was going to be a long-term boarding scenario, and she had confirmed that that wasn't part of this practice. So just wanted to bring that up. Other than that, I don't have any other questions. Speak
to that a little bit, Jim, if you want me to, for the record. Sure. The question was, you know, this use is going to allow short-term boarding of animals, and what does that mean? And we don't define short-term boarding in our code. However, we would treat that as the keeping of an animal inside, since veterinarians have to operate inside, until they can be picked up by their owner, such as after a procedure or while they're waiting to wake up, for instance. It does not include overnight stay or doggy daycare type of boarding, and the reason for that is that those types of uses require a use permit. If you refer to attachment 2, you'll see animal boarding is listed as a conditional use in C3, and that commonly has outdoor use areas. That's not allowed with a veterinarian. And that would, if there was any sort of animal boarding overnight or any sort of animal boarding in an outdoor area, that requires a use permit. And additionally, it wouldn't include overnight boarding without a use permit, because any business in a C commercial district that operates between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. requires a use permit, no matter what type of business it is. And so any overnight boarding proposed within the C3 district would fall under animal boarding and would require a conditional use permit for overnight, and for the reason that it's animal boarding, which is by definition is a conditional use in C3.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
very good. Yeah, that's very good. Commissioner Bandel, do you have any questions for staff?
I do. The examples that you showed, Tracy, are all buildings that are freestanding buildings. And this is a building where other people would have their businesses too. And I'm just wondering about the idea of noise and smell and disposal of biological waste in a building that's shared by other businesses.
Sure, that's a great question. And I spoke to that a little bit in terms of handling sound attenuation at the landlord-tenant level. And that would be too, if maybe Mr. Jakovich could speak to that a little bit, is how would a landlord deal with any conflict that a veterinarian would have with some other use that's next door or below or what have you. I'm interested if you could say a few words there.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sebastian Jakovich. I am the representing our family that owns 200 Nellen, that built 200 Nellen. Specifically to your question, Larkspur Vet is now in the Larkspur Shopping Center. They've been there since 1978. They're losing their lease, and that's why they pursued this location with us. And they are next to Marin Bruco, the former 24-Hour Fitness, and numerous other businesses, and have operated there successfully without issue for decades now. My family corporate office is up there. If we had any concern about this use, this building was extremely expensive to build. It's the newest building in Southern Marin. We wouldn't be entertaining this use. We've had other people that have wanted to put other businesses in there, deep frying of food and things like that, that we might find objectionable for smells. And we just know in using Dr. Press with our animals, that she runs an incredible operation, clean operation, and we've built all those protections in the use within the lease, that she has to build her space to the soundproofing mitigation measures by a professional sound engineer. We certainly wouldn't want to put ourselves, we built this building for ourselves, and we are the tenants ourselves. We wouldn't want to disrupt ourselves. So we built those protections within the lease, and also proper removal of waste. I can tell you that a vacant building, there's human waste around the building. The homeless problem has been creeping in. And so we do notice those issues in and around all the buildings that we own there on the freeway. And we've also built into the lease provisions that the veterinary clinic would clean up after any of the animals that may be outside or taken on a brief walk and so forth. So we have no concerns about it whatsoever.
How many,
Yeah, go ahead, Margaret. Yeah.
you called them bays. How many bays would the vet take up?
3 of the 4, I think it's roughly 3,000 or so square feet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sebastian.
That is correct. It originally started out of 3 of the 4 bays, but we've subsequently agreed to lease the entire space to Dr. Press. I think one of the issues that are going on is if you have pets, and if you try to get veterinary care for your pets, specifically in Corte Madera or Larkspur, that there are very few vets because the zoning really didn't allow for them in very many places. And so now you have to travel further away to get treatment for your animals. And Dr. Press turns away at least 10 to 20 customers per day because of the inability to accommodate them for space. So she came to us and said, look, now's the time. If I build out a new space, now's the time to increase my ability to cater to the community. And so right now, this was the latest development within the last week that we agreed to lease the entire downstairs to her, should this be approved.
Is there any limitation on the size of the animals or the type of animals that are cared for there?
Not in our lease, but they typically do household animals, dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, rabbits. Dr. Press is available to speak to you as well as any of the other commissioners, but those are the typical animals that veterinary hospitals service. Larger animals such as horses, sheep, goats, and those sorts of things typically have a veterinary service that goes to the farm or to the location that the animals are located at. These are basically extended family members that get treated here.
So, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. Getting back to the original thing, it's if the vet is taking up the entire ground floor of that building, it pretty much is then a standalone building for the vet. Is that how you see it?
That's how I see it.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Margaret. Dr. Bundy, do you have any questions?
No, Tracy has covered everything very thoroughly.
All right, yeah, and Phyllis, how about you?
Well, first, I want to thank Tracy for a very thorough report. And the only comment I have to make is looking at the map. C4 is right across the freeway from C3. And in C4 is where the Madera Pet Hospital is that I've been using. And I can't see why there would be any problem in having one on the other side of the freeway. It's nice to have two close by.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I don't have any questions for Dr. Press or for Sebastian. So at this point then, would any of you care to make a presentation before we open it up to public comment?
I believe Dr. Press would like to make a presentation. The only words I have to say is that in looking at the code, when we approached Planning Director Wolf, we were confused by the lack of veterinary services within the zoning because C3 is such a broad zoning, actually. And it was interesting to find pet sales are allowed. Pet boarding is allowed as a conditional use, as Tracy explained. Pet retail, you could sell pet food and pet accessories. All the other medical uses, such as dentistry, optometry, surgical centers, other medical is fully allowed, but not the care of your animals. And I know, at least in my family, our dog is our third child. Our dog gets probably better care than certainly many of our other family members get. And it was shocking that this really just seemed like a gap within the zoning, and hasn't been really updated, as Tracy pointed out, in over 6 decades. And I believe pets are more important to our families and our neighborhoods and our community than ever before. And there's clearly a need. We actually had 3 veterinarians provide letters of interest, letters of intent to lease the space. And there's been very other little retail interest. There's been some banking, Starbucks coffee, those sorts of things, but we really felt that this was an appropriate use. And we felt comfortable enough, given our investment there in our own corporate offices, to work with Dr. Press on this. And she's been patient enough to go through the process here of getting this approved and hopefully successfully. So that's basically the only things I'd like to say at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sebastian. Mary?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. To answer your question, Larkspur Landing Vet Hospital only does dogs and cats. And I just had a couple words to say. I'm here today, obviously, to ask that veterinary service as a permitted use in C3 zoning district. As Sebastian mentioned, pet retail, pet grooming, pet sales, pet boarding, and all human medical services are allowed currently in zone C3. It seems logical that a veterinary practice should follow suit and easily fit into this zoning. I'm asking to change 200 Nellen in Corte Madera to allow zoning for a veterinary hospital to allow me to relocate my vet hospital. I'm sure in 1958, when veterinary practices were zoned C4, veterinary medicine was very different, likely involving sheep and cattle. Veterinary medicine has evolved significantly over the last 60 years. We now practice highly technical medicine on small animal dogs and cats that are clean, well-behaved, and considered family members. I in no way consider it a semi-industrial profession. Larkspur Landing Vet Hospital was founded in 1978 by Jack Lacine as an original tenant in Larkspur Landing. I've owned it since 1996. That's 26 years. I've been a pillar in the community, providing healthcare for thousands of the community pets, committed to keeping Larkspur Landing Vet Hospital privately owned as a permanent fixture in the community. I've won the Larkspur Chamber of Commerce Business Citizen of the Year. I speak at Hall Middle School Career Day every year. I had the Girl Scout troops visit my office last week. And earlier this month, I was interviewed by the Marin Independent Journal about the shortage of veterinarians locally and nationwide. I've also raised my 5 children in this community. I frequently have 4-H groups visit my office to learn about veterinary medicine. I've mentored many local students and have written many letters of recommendation to get them into veterinary school. The new location at 200 Nellen Ave provides easy on and off highway access and has ample parking. We have a loyal and dedicated clientele and staff. There's only one other veterinary practice, as you mentioned, in Corte Madera, and that's on the east side of Highway 101. Veterinary medicine is crucial to the character of Corte Madera. Animals are crucial for people's mental health. Pet ownership and demand for veterinary services has increased dramatically prior to and during the pandemic. We turn away, as Sebastian mentioned, between 10 and 20 potential new clients every day so that we can serve our current and existing clients. Veterinary services are desperately needed as care is being turned down for pets all across Marin County. Having accessible new facility will allow us to better serve our community. My landlord served me with an eviction notice on October 1st and gave me 6 months. I have to move out by April 1st. I asked him for an extension and he denied it. We're under a tight timeline as I don't want to see any of our animals go untreated due to this move. If it is a long process to change the C3 zoning and it would be quicker to ask for a variance for a veterinary use at 200 Nellen, I would be very appreciative for that as well. For the work, tenant improvement is slated to take 4 to 6 months at least. Good veterinary care, as Sebastian mentioned, is hard to find. Moving a proven vet into Corte Madera will increase the community's access to pet care. Pets are a significant part of people's lives, and allowing this zoning change would allow a locally owned practice to stay local. The only negative impact I could see on the community would be to not allow for this use to occur. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So at this point in consideration of this item, we're going to open it up to public comment. Anyone who's going to either raise their hand or email to publiccomment@tcmmail.org can do so. You have 3 minutes to speak and comment on this item. So Tracy, do we have any hands?
Don't see any hands. Give everyone a minute. If you want to raise your hand, it's a hand icon in the middle bottom of the Zoom window. I'll check email in the meantime. No emails.
No emails, okay. There's also a Q&A or a sort of a chat option at the bottom of the screen where you can make a comment. But
See none.
see none. So I think that the presentation has been fairly comprehensive here. I'm going to bring it back to the commission and close the public comment section of this hearing and ask for commissioners to provide their commentary on this item and tell us if they can make the findings to make the recommendation to the town council. So, Commissioner Bundy.
I support the resolution and can make the findings.
Okay. Mr. Rizzo.
I feel the same way. I think this use aligns with the other uses in this district, in C3.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Bandel.
I appreciate all the answers to my questions, and I think it'll be a good use for the building.
Right, absolutely. And Commissioner Metcalf.
I can certainly make all the findings. As far as I'm concerned, animals are family members. And I would like to see that beautiful building used. And
Yeah.
I think this is an excellent use of it, and I would be very happy to have more than one vet in Corte Madera.
I have just one question for the applicant about how many people will work in the offices there?
Is that to me?
Yes,
Yeah. I currently have 12 employees and 3 veterinarians, so a total of 15.
it's quite a load, yeah, okay. I can make the findings, so I think that it's now time for us to vote on whether or not we're gonna send a resolution to the town council recommending approval of this. Does anybody want to make the motion?
Do we need to read the resolution?
It's a lot of words. No, Bob.
Can we just make the motion?
Yes, you could just make the motion to approve.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve.
Second,
Okay,
Start with Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Bandel,
Yes.
Commissioner Bundy,
Yes,
Vice Chair Metcalf,
yes,
and Chairman Chase.
yes, and I can practically hear the angels and the harps ringing in the background here. So I think this is a great thing. Okay. Are there any appeal rights or anything that go with this? No, this is just a resolution to the town council, so there's nothing to say about that.
Correct. The next step will be scheduling a hearing at the town council for introduction of the ordinance.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much and best of luck.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda tonight is 46 Birch Avenue. This is a design review application PL 210081 for an 824 square foot second level addition to the existing residence at 46 Birch Avenue. Mr. Boyle, this is yours to present.
Yes, it is. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Can everyone see my screen there?
yes,
Great. Let me turn it to take up the whole screen. There we go. So good evening. The application before you is a design review application for a residential second story addition of 824 square feet located at 46 Birch Avenue. The project is located, shown here on the map, near the intersection of Birch Avenue and Lakeside. The backyard faces one of Corte Madera's lagoons. The site is almost ostensibly flat. I did just want to mention, as I mentioned in the staff report and in the notice, the Planning Commission approved a similar project of similar size at this location in September of 2020. The applicants decided not to move forward with that design and have submitted this brand new application, which is before you tonight. The proposed site plan, the proposed footprint is only slightly different than the existing one. The existing footprint has a small bay window here that's being removed and flattened out, and some other small changes to the first floor, but the majority of the first floor remains as is, and the addition, of course, is on the second floor. Current views of the residence with the story poles, which have been up in the allotted amount of time and were also certified as being accurate. Again, this is showing that, of course, the front garage, the front door in the middle, and rooms to the left. The addition, as you'll see, is located on the left side of the building, and it also moves across the center of the building also. Here's the existing and proposed first level of the project. I've highlighted and I've outlined in red the area that's changing. To the left is the existing, and so that area there in red is changing to what's shown on the right. Starting with the entryway, a change in the entryway, centering it, making it a little bit larger area to enter. And then as you enter, turning to the left, that bedroom has been turned into a 2 bathrooms. And then continuing to the left, you'll have another bedroom, a stairway, another bath, and then a bedroom. Just noting that these bedrooms and baths here are existing, as you can see on the existing floor plan. They're just being reconfigured, where you're going from 2 baths and the master suite down here to 1 bath, 2 standard size bedrooms, and the new stairway. So that's your existing and proposed first level. The existing and proposed second levels look like this. Currently, the second level is really just a small loft area that has a ceiling height that is below 7.5 feet, so it does not count towards floor area ratio. And that loft area is pretty much staying the same. It will still exist, but there's no change in the ceiling height, so it will continue to be an area that is not counted towards FAR. And then the rest of, on the right here, the rest of the area outlined in red, of course, is your second floor addition with the stairway here, immediately to the right, a bedroom facing the street. If one continues straight, there'll be an uncovered terrace, which you'll see in the front elevation, access from the top of the stair and looking out towards the street. And then to the left of the stair, you have the master bedroom, master bath, and closet, or basically the master suite here, and 2 doorways leading out to a balcony, relatively 4 to 5 foot deep balcony, the width of the back of the building, looking out towards the backyard and the view of Mount Tam. So that's your second floor addition there. Existing and proposed east or front elevation, again, up above the building as it is. Proposed the garage, no change to the area. The roof area, as I mentioned, the front door gets more centered and the front porch is widened. And then you have the upper balcony here. The gray is a stucco material, which is present in your packet with the color and materials board. A stucco material there. And then on this area, you have vertical a particular type of wood siding that the applicant may, or the architect may explain that particular wood material that they're proposing. So here again, you have shed roofs off the garage, a small shed roof here, and then a small awning for rain protection over the front door. Moving on to the rear elevation, the existing rear elevation, you know, a large bank of windows all the way across the entire backyard. And then the proposed is, again, continuing those bank of windows in the main living space, the great room, and the kitchen area. And then up above, as I mentioned in the floor plan, you have the master suite, master bath, and then a balcony spanning, you know, about 2/3 of the rear elevation. Now moving over to the side, the south side elevation. Again, here you have, you know, using smaller windows to try to minimize the impact to the neighbors to the south. These are, and then a larger bank of windows. And this is the stairway here. So again, placing windows to try to minimize view impacts. I'm sorry, try to minimize privacy impacts. I will note that, as I'll show, there are letters from both neighbors on either side that could potentially be impacted by privacy. And both of those neighbors submitted, after seeing the plans, letters of support and did not express any concern regarding privacy or shading. So as I pointed out in the staff report, you know, this is an element that is basically, you know, the two-story wall and articulations, you know, items have been added by articulating with the stucco element here, bringing out, I believe it's about maybe 6 to 12 inches out from the wood siding to give a little bit of relief there. And then the stucco element here down below. Continuing on to the north elevation. So the north elevation looking in, this is starting from this side, this is your garage. So driving into the garage, you have an exterior door to provide access to the backyard. This is that loft area that again exists today. And then back behind here into the great room area again with the chimney. This area is set back quite a bit, as explained in the staff report. So though this reads as a complete, you know, solid stucco wall, in fact, you know, this is quite a bit set back in distance, and so there isn't that. I think it will read, you know, more articulation than as seen on a plan here. Just project summary. Again, not very similar to the project that was approved in the past in terms of numbers. And the project meets all of the requirements of the R1 zoning district, the floor area ratio going from 32 to 44, 48 is allowed. Lot coverage, it remains the same. They're taking away some areas on that first floor and adding on some others, and resulting in a delta of 0. All setbacks are not changing. Height is going from, you know, existing single-story home of 15 feet to a pretty, you know, relatively common height of a second-story home at 25 feet 4 inches, and no change to the parking situation. It meets the parking code. As I mentioned, in terms of neighborhood outreach, neighborhood response, all the folks on the starred properties here submitted letters of support. All 6 of the surrounding neighbors expressed support of the project and saw no impact to their natural light, privacy, or views. This is a diagram just showing the number of second stories in the area. As we all know, as these projects come along quite often, and this area continues to grow with additional second stories. Here's some examples of second stories that have been constructed on Birch Avenue. Again, variety of different treatments whether, the second level is built, over the entire house, whether it's located on one side again, or also built, across the garage element. So a lot of different architectural styles, or placements of second floor additions in the area. So based on that and the reviewing of the staff report and all of the documents that the applicant required submitted, staff is able to recommend approval of this project. I did want to point out in some conversations with commissioners that the applicant has provided as I mentioned in the staff report, the applicant has provided an appraisal of the structure and then also a cost summary of the construction of the project. And based upon that, those two documents, they will not exceed 50%, a bit below 50% of the cost for the remodel in relation to the value of the structure. And per our code, that means they're not required to elevate the structure. The structure currently is approximately at an elevation of 8.4 feet. So I should mention that earlier, but again, they have chosen not to elevate the structure, and they are not required to. And again, with that, I recommend approval of the draft resolution 21018 with conditions that are applied to that resolution, and I'm available for any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. So before we move into presentation from the applicant, I will ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you regarding this application. Commissioner Metcalf, do you have any questions for Phil?
No questions at this time.
All right. Mr. Rizzo, do you have any questions for Phil?
I have a question. I'm wondering, is the reason the siting of the two-story, the major volume on the south side, is that because one of the neighbors, maybe at 49 Birch, would have a block view from over the garage? I mean, why was all the mass kind of set on one side of the building?
I don't know if you can answer that, Mr. Boyle, or we'll wait to hear from the applicant.
No, I was just wondering if that happened through the community, if there was any comment through the community outreach that happened in all the meetings.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Rizzo. No, that was not in response to community outreach. The community outreach was all positive. And so this was the initial and only design that the applicant submitted, and I'm sure they can discuss, if you're interested, rationale for where they located the second floor.
Sure. Thank you. It was more about the community outreach. I thought there might have been someone from the other side of the street in the last presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Vandal, do you have any questions for staff at this point?
I don't at this point.
Okay. Thank you. So Phil, who's going to make a presentation for the applicant here?
I'm not exactly sure, perhaps the homeowner or the architect, or maybe both.
Did I forget you, Bob?
Jump in here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, this is Steve Rivera.
I did have a question for Phil. Remind me about.
Go ahead, Bob.
Phil, remind me about the 50% rule again. That because the previous remodels and upgrades to the kitchen and the house had been done more than a certain number of years ago, we're looking at this as just a sort of new project without having to consider, what the costs were in the past to do any of these other upgrades.
In terms of the previous project back in September 2020?
No, I think there was a comment that the kitchen or some of the lower levels had previously been upgraded, but if they've been upgraded a number of years before, you don't have to take that into consideration, that's part of the 50% that would trigger having to meet the FEMA flood standard for elevation.
There is a 5-year timeline or five-year gap, or sorry, timeline is the better word. So if one proposes to do, if one has a $1 million home and just the home, and one proposes to do a remodel that costs $300,000, and then 2 years later comes in and wants to do another remodel for another $300,000, totaling $600,000, that's more than the value. That's more than 50% of the value of the structure, and therefore they would be required to elevate it. But that's not the case in this particular project.
Thank you.
And I did want to just emphasize that our public works department is the floodplain management and floodplain manager, and they will look closely at the cost estimate and the project that these folks submit for building permit when it comes down to building permit, if this is approved. And so that will be very closely scrutinized, that their costs remain below 50% as they are shown today in the documents they've provided.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Sorry, I missed you there. Okay, so Mr. Rivera, you want to make a statement or make a presentation?
Yeah, sure. Phil, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you all for being here again. I apologize for the redundancy. I know we did this a year ago. And I apologize that my wife, Allie, is not here, but she had a work event she had to be at. So thank you for taking the time again. Happy to answer any questions. Again, I know that this was approved a year ago and we sort of went down another path. Totally happy to explain why we did that. But if it's overkill, I'll wait till somebody asks me to do that. Also wanted to introduce my design studio, Christina Gulino, who's on this call, and her colleague, Ryan Perella, who is the architect on this project. So if y'all have any questions, please fire away.
Well, we'll ask that. Is there any other information you wish to give us regarding the project? And why don't you just in a few sentences explain why you have come back to us with a new plan?
Yeah, so, after your approval a year ago, I started going down the building permit process, and frankly, just ran into a lot of sleepless nights myself thinking, geez, I feel like I'm putting my money into the wrong area of this house. Before, if you recall, we had a dormer over the garage, and I was essentially putting money into creating sort of a glorified storage unit, if you will. And I kept waking up thinking, geez, when my mother-in-law comes to visit, she's going to be, banging her head on the ceiling, walking around. That's a bad thing, for the record. When she walks around and then I had a friend over one time and I was showing her the plans and I was saying, oh, it's going to be great. I'll be up here on work calls and I can be looking out these windows to the front of the street. And she said, are you looking at these plans right? I think only your kids' hamsters are going to be able to see out these windows. And so that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I went to Christina, who was helping me with the interior design at the time. And I said, I voiced my concerns, and she validated them and said, hey, let me bring in Ryan and let's see if we can come up with some solutions to get you what you need without, changing the budget. And of course, without changing the massing on this project, which I really did, with all of our neighbors in mind. We've been there for 9 years. I wanted to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood felt comfortable with this project. And so they came back to me with this current plan. And frankly, I love it. The only sleepless nights I'm having now are the excitement for getting this project underway, if it is approved. And I think that they were able to make a few tweaks to really get us the home that we plan to be in. And I know it was a few steps back, but in the long run, I think it's the right move, and we plan to be there for the long run. So I hope you'll consider approving the project.
Certainly. So before we go to public comment on this thing, I'll just ask the commissioners if they have any comments. And if you do, stick your hand up in the air. Any questions for the applicant. outside of what you may have asked Mr. Boyle. So if you have a question for Mr. Rivera, put your hand up and I'll call on you. And I don't see anybody doing such at this moment. So what we'll do, oh, there you go, Commissioner Bandel.
I guess before I hear the public comments or come to some kind of conclusion, I'd like to hear somebody's explanation of how they believe this design really integrates with the character of the neighborhood.
It's a fair question.
Sorry. Hi, Ryan Pearl. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the design architect to this project. I think that, what we've done on this project is kind of, provide a simple massing of it, using traditional American design language of gabled roofs, and kind of keeping the simplification on the second floor of the L shape, that keeps that two main roofs on the second floor, kind of hearkening back to some traditional American farmhouse language. So I think that there's kind of a traditional route to this project, even though we use some cleaner natural materials in its execution. I feel like at its heart, I think it's a traditional home that kind of blends in well with, the various traditional styles that are represented in the Lagoon neighborhood. Not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, or.
It's a fair response. So,
Yes, you've answered
right.
what I asked.
Mr. Rizzo.
I guess I'm gonna continue with my questioning about having all the mass on one side of the house and not stepping it back either from the side or from the front, and having that big two-story volume kind of concentrated on the south and up towards the street there. What kind of design consideration was thought of when you guys were doing that, or is it just programming?
Sure. So that was, not only programming, but a need to be both efficient and economical with what we're doing on this project. We have some steep limitations on FAR with what we're doing there. And as Phil mentioned earlier, we have to be pretty mindful about the budget we spend here to not, go into a position where we'd have to raise the entire house and do that work. So we've kind of focused all of the work that's being done, as Phil mentioned to you before, on the ground floor. We're being pretty sensitive to the northern side, the garage, the living, the family, the kitchen, the entry. All those areas are kind of being untouched. And we're really focusing the touch on the southern side there, where those bedrooms, the stairwell, and that's kind of why we've bulked that there on the southern side. Additionally, that kind of L shape that's happening on the second floor reduces the kind of, the bulk and the width of that gable on the first floor, out facing the street. We haven't stepped back that front edge, but it's only the width of one bedroom that's close. And the majority of it, the bed, the bathroom and the closet that extend are pushed pretty far back from the street. So instead of having, a wider frontage that is maybe only set back, 4 or 5 feet from the front facade, we've kept a very narrow area of it close to the front facade and then step back a huge bulk of it. So that's kind of what led us into the massing that you see presented there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Phyllis, question.
Yes. You are aware of the fact that we wish to have an external setback for second floors. Your addition does not have that. I also question the use of the natural wood color, which to me is jarring with the rest of the house. I mean, if it was painted a color like the other ones, the wood siding of other homes in the neighborhood and stuff, I think it would fit in better.
Do you have a question in there?
Yeah,
Phil?
my question is, why do you think you don't have to set back the front as we desire and request?
Our project, we followed the guidelines as Phil outlined, that we're not requesting a variance against any of the guidelines. We've maintained we followed the guidelines in this direction. So I'm not aware of a specific guideline request here that we have not followed in this. If maybe Phil, you could help me on that.
I can just reiterate that there is nothing in our code that dictates that second floors, shall be recessed from existing lower floor walls. That's certainly a request often of the commission, and it happens in certain projects, and at the same time, we've had many projects where the existing first level wall and the new second level wall are on the same plane. Often happens on second story, on side elevations. I would concur with Ms. Metcalf. This doesn't happen often on the front elevation, but it certainly has at other times. But I'll just reiterate, there's no specific requirement as in terms of setbacks or hard numbers that says that a second story addition has to be set back from the existing walls of the house.
And my second question was why you chose to go with the natural wood color, which doesn't seem to match other homes in the neighborhood or even match with this home that is being worked on.
There's a lot, the neighborhood is full of natural vegetation and trees. I mean, as Phil showed on the front elevation, there's 2 giant trees in the front of the house. And I'm of the opinion that a natural wood material will blend much more in with the nature and add kind of beauty and visual interest versus a painted wood siding. I'm sure we could discuss, modifications to that material into a painted siding if that's a preferable direction. But we came from the notation that a natural material would appear softer and more elegant with all the vegetation in the neighborhood.
And also, what room is the small part of the wood siding that has the one window on it with the slanted roof? It looks like it's an extension.
That is a bathroom downstairs. It's a bathroom for one of the bedrooms.
I have no more questions at this time, Peter.
Okay. I have just one minor question, and that is, it looks like the chimney over the central part of the house, the master bedroom chimney, is much higher than it needs to be. Is there a reason why it's so high?
Sorry, I'm flipping quickly here. No, we can entertain setting that at, appropriate 2 feet over the 10 foot over the ridge line.
Right.
We can reduce that.
Okay. I just thought that, it looked like maybe that was a idea that maybe it would look better if it were taller, but it's extraordinarily tall.
We can certainly entertain reducing that down to the minimum requirement.
All right. Okay, so commissioners have asked their questions. We'll go to public comment now, then we'll take it back to the commission to discuss and come up with a verdict on the motion. So with that said, I open up the public comment section of this item. You can email at publiccomment@tcmmail.org, or you can raise a hand on the screen.
See any raised hands at the moment, Chair Chase? And no emails. No emails either.
Okay. Yeah, just looking at the list. Don't see anybody sticking their hand up in the air. So, okay. All right. We'll give it another beat. So for public comment on this item. And seeing that no one wants to raise their hand, we'll close the public comment section of this item, and we'll take it back to the commission to discuss. So I'll start with you, Margaret Vandell. I would like to hear from you first.
I have a real problem with this, the design as far as the way it fits the character of the neighborhood. I understand the reasoning that, and I appreciate the answers, but I don't think it integrates well with the neighborhood. I think it's very box-like to me, and that front is just, to me, too weighted and too flat-looking from the street view. And I don't think I could make the findings.
Okay. That's fairly straightforward. Commissioner Rizzo.
Okay, I'm not muted like usual. So, I mean, I'm actually having trouble after looking at the plans and knowing construction. It seems just about every room is touched, and every room that's not touched might have some structural work to accommodate the upper floor. All new bathrooms, and I'm finding it pretty hard to believe the estimate only came in at $500,000 for all this work. That would allow them to be exempt from the FEMA. That's just from personal knowledge and just knowing the scope of remodeling of this nature and scope. I think it's almost there's not going to be much left other than that kitchen and the garage. I mean, they're redoing the roofs as well, so I could see it being a pretty fairly extensive and expensive project. So I just like to say that I don't know if that quote's actually going to hold true in the end, and I hope it does for the applicant, because I want to hire that GC for one of my projects. But secondly, I think that what both the other commissioners were speaking about with the nature and character of the neighborhoods was in the general plan. We've got some implementation guidelines, CD-2.4, which encourages applicants to do several things. And some of them are setting back the upper floor planes to break up the mass and the volume and to be sensitive to the neighbors. And I feel kind of the same way about that south elevation being pretty long and massive and not really setting back on the side or the facade facing the street. I think applicant and the architect could do a better job of breaking that up a little more, making it feel a little bit more in kind with some of the other 2 stories that were approved in the neighborhood. And I feel like also that the massing elements, and I don't know if it's the renderings, but they don't really feel that organized, which I feel doesn't have a lot of continuity, which is another part of some of the findings in our general plan number 4, 5, and 6. So I think to get this project into a state where it really fits and is harmonious with the neighborhood, I think that they could do a bit more work with the massing of the upper floor and that front facade and use of materials. So I'm gonna wait till I hear everybody else's comments before I make an opinion of my findings.
Thank you, Jim. Dr. Bundy.
I spent a lot of time looking at these plans because they are a little different from some of the other second stories, but looking at it in relationship to the site, the other houses that are there, particularly the trees that are on the property, I came around to thinking that I think this works, and I like this, and I can make the findings.
Thank you very much, Bob. Phyllis Metcalf.
I cannot make the findings, especially 4 and 6. I don't think it integrates well with the neighborhood. You know, we're not looking at tract houses that all have to look the same, but this stands out jarringly. I think the natural wood siding does not work with even the rest of the house. And I would like to see this second story setback. You've got this vertical, you know, this elevation that goes straight up, front and side, which is not the best way to go. I mean, the codes and stuff are the minimum. That doesn't mean if you don't want any variances, it gets automatically accepted. And there are things that we request. They're not the law, they're not an ordinance. And we ask for setbacks to make things not look so massive and heavy. The original design from last year fits more with what works in the neighborhood. And something working towards that for the facade, especially the front, would certainly be, in my opinion, an approval. I mean, one of the things that I learned when I was studying architecture is having things seem to fit and work together. And this house, to me, does not work together, the left side from the right side. So as I say, I cannot make the findings as this apparently appears.
Thank you, Phyllis. For my part, I'm going to agree with Dr. Bundy, and I think that this could work. I just barely, I could make the findings for it. I appreciate the language here that does echo some of the other elements of houses in the neighborhood. And I think it starts to put a stake out further in the design realm that veers away from the typical second story setback that we have going on throughout the neighborhood. So I appreciate what it's trying to do, and I like it because it's doing that and it's creating a new stake. We did approve another building on Lakeside that has vertical siding and it has natural gray tones to it. And this is less of an instrument of verticality than that house has. But I do agree with Mr. Rizzo, and I think that when I look at the value of the house on Zillow, it's at $1 million or $2 million. So I think that putting $1 million into this house is just barely getting by to what's on paper. So I think that the estimate has to be very carefully looked at no matter what happens with the final design here. So that's my sense of the project. So back to looking at where we stand as a commission, I think Mr. Rizzo is the one person that may sway one way or the other, but I think he may be a no vote. How say you, Tim?
I think that I'd like to see him come back with something that was a little bit more sensitive to that side of the building. Can I make a motion for continuation?
Yes, well, we can ask the applicant whether they want to come to a date certain or if they would like to put it off to a time that the staff determines that it would be down the road. So you guys have your calendar of dates that are open in the future. So Mr. Boyle and Mr. Wolf, I don't know if there is such a time that you would throw up for a possible date certain.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have, the next scheduled meetings are December 14th and January 11th.
So Mr. Perella and Mr. Rivera, that's where we are right now. We have a 3-2 division of the commission right now. And you have a choice of whether you want to bring it back for a specific date, or if you just want to go back and come back to staff with a date that you would like to notice for another hearing.
I think that we can't quite commit to a day at this point, considering we'll be looking at modifications. We need to, I don't know if we could pick that date at this exact moment.
Okay. So then what we will not do is vote, which we could do. We could vote on this and turn it down, or you can just say you'll return to a date uncertain. You have that option in front of you right now. What would you like to do?
What do you think,
Right.
Ryan?
What's the question? Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes, I think we'd like to return at an uncertain date. I'm sorry, I didn't.
All right. So, Mr. Boyle, that would be where we stand then, that it would be,
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Ann or Adam, do we still want to vote to say, the commission votes 3-2 to continue to a date uncertain?
It's not through, yeah, I'd like to take a motion, have a motion that
Yeah.
that's what the commission would like to do, and then we can have the commission make that motion to continue this item.
Yes,
okay, very
thank
good.
you, Adam.
So, which commissioner would like to make that motion to continue to a date uncertain?
Jim, do you want to make it?
Sure. I'll make the motion to continue to a date that's uncertain on item 5B on 46 Birch Avenue, design review application PL 21-0081 for a 824 square foot second level addition to the existing residence at 46 Birch Avenue.
Okay, second on that.
I'll second that. I have a question to ask about the resolution. Do we have to say what we are looking for when they come back? Is that necessary?
It's not legally necessary, but I think it would be very helpful. You don't have to put it in the motion if that's what you mean.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't have to be in the motion, but we can discuss it.
It would help the applicant.
Yeah,
Right, so right now we have on the table that motion, but if you guys would like to reiterate, what I've heard is that the massing on the street side and the north side is too significant. And you would like to have some step backs or some edges brought into the design from the first to the second story. And some review or consideration of the natural wood siding,
Yes.
the vertical element.
I think you said them all, Peter.
Okay.
Well, there was one phrase that I like particularly that Jim used, and that was, he said, and it needed to be more organized between the front, along the front. And that sort of struck a chord with me. It needs more organization. Is that how you put it, Jim?
Yes, I just some of the elements could use
Yeah.
a little bit more organization to
Yeah.
give it a little bit more continuity.
Yeah, there's lacking a nexus.
Yeah.
okay.
All right, does that provide you with some substantive feedback, gentlemen? Okay.
That's for me. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we can take a roll call on the motion.
Okay, the motion still stands, so I'll take the roll call and start with Commissioner Rizzo.
So it's a motion for yes, because the motion is to continue, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Commissioner Vandell? That was a yes, okay. Commissioner Bundy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Metcalf,
Yes,
and Chairman Chase.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate your willingness to listen.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so at this point, we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll be back here for the business item, which is the 24 Mohawk. Okay, we're all back now. So let's proceed. Next on our agenda is a business item. This is a preliminary study review for 24 Mohawk Avenue. Second preliminary review of a proposal for construction of a new 2-story single-family home with a detached garage shop and the demolition of the existing residence at 24 Mohawk Avenue. Mr. Boyle.
Good evening again, commissioners. I'll do a brief introduction and then pose a question to the applicant. Just to give you all a heads up and a reminder, 2 months ago in September of this year, you saw 24 Mohawk as a preliminary review. It was rather late on one of your meetings, and had received a lot of feedback from the neighbors, a lot of feedback from the commissioners, and the applicant has made a number of significant changes regarding the proposal. It is still a 2-story or a second floor addition, basically a tear down of the existing home and the construction of a 2-story home with carport and possible front door on the carport, and then garage in the same location as it was before, but much smaller. So I'll kind of put it, if you don't mind, Chair Chase, I'll ask the applicant if they would like me to run through my PowerPoint, or I could just hand it over to them and let them give their presentation.
Certainly. Go ahead. Yes.
Well, Phil, maybe just like a 1-minute run through, and then maybe I'll take it from there and reintroduce ourselves. It looks like you put all these slides together, so you know. Okay. All right, I'll do a quick run through. Thank you. So yes, again, this is a rendering of the front elevation that they've proposed. And here's the project location at 24 Mohawk, a large lot, pie-shaped lot, being a challenge to develop in terms of, could be seen as a challenge to develop in terms of the smallness of the front property line in terms of width and expanding out to the back. Like I said, site plan is the same. These 2 dashed lines, the outer one is the first floor with the carport to the left, and the inner one is the second floor, front porch here, and garage back here. Just quickly, and I think that the applicant has better images. These got a little bit grainy of the proposed new, but this is just comparing the front elevation of the September version and the front elevation of today's version. These are, again, much more clearer in the plan set that you have, that you were sent in hard copy. Same thing. Again, I just have the side elevations comparing one to the other. Of course, the main change in the change in the design is, instead of these shed roof elements that they proposed initially, they've gone with flat roofs at all locations of the building. I've also given, this is all in your staff report, but I've given a summary of all the different changes that they have made. I'll just, very briefly: reduction of height by about 5 feet, massing significantly changed due to reduction in the second floor itself, bringing in the sides of the second floor to reduce that massing as well. Garage has changed from a 3-car to a 2-car, and a reduction in 54 square feet, and been reduced down to a height of 10 feet. The entire garage was before just that back half over the rear setback was 10 feet. Privacy concerns, I'll just leave those there. Again, this is all in your packet. They've addressed specific privacy concerns regarding 22 Mohawk, 26 Mohawk, and 524 Tamalpais. Shadowing, they've also, minimized that by lowering the height of the structure, changing the roof style, and they did not do a revised shadow study for this second prelim, but we'll certainly do that for the formal application or formal public hearing that if they proceed in that direction. So that's a real quick summary. In terms of public comment, as I mentioned, a couple public comments trickled in as late as shortly after 6, and then we just received one at 7:30. I can just very briefly read it. It's from Susie Denning, who also submitted a comment earlier. Again, this came in at roughly 7:30. She states, I believe the applicants have purchased the wrong lot to build the revised and current proposed house, period. There are, again, I think the other comments that came in later, they all are on the website. And if you like at a certain time, we can read those directly if you like. So that concludes my report.
Okay, well then, Mr. Sales, it is up to you then to make your pitch and presentation.
Okay, thank you, Phil. That was very good, brief, succinct summary of our updated schemes. Also on the call is my dad, our architect. He's done the plans and helped us out with the revised sketches. Obviously, this is a preliminary review and understanding that we're making a lot of changes. We didn't do a full CAD update, just trying to get the feedback and any other input before we undertake the full CAD update for our application. Just to take a step back for a second, just to reintroduce ourselves in case there's somebody new on the call. We've been in Marin for 2 years now. We moved from San Francisco. We rented a house in Seminole a few blocks away, purchased this house 1.5 years ago. Been trying to get our vision, realized so we can move our family in. We've actually relocated because our lease was up, and just trying to keep the progress going so we can settle down finally in Corte Madera. Just maybe to go through our plans a little more, there was a lot of feedback that we got at the study session, and in all honesty, a lot of it was pretty critical. Tried to take as much of it to heart as we can, listen to the commentary we got. We reached back out to all our neighbors that supported or had criticism of the project, had more outreach at the property, and a lot of it was interrupted by rain. Tried to reach out to all our neighbors, really, made an effort to get feedback and try and come up with a design that we thought, addressed those concerns, spoke to the character of the neighborhood, and, worked for us, and made a visually pleasing house. It's big picture. I'll just, maybe zoom in here on the rendering. Our old design was, very contemporary, and a lot of people didn't like that. So we thought long and hard about the type of house that we wanted. And, we kind of came up with the idea that we would like a flat roof, mid-century modern architecture. And the reason for that was it seems to fit within the style of the era of the houses that were built here and in other parts of Marin. And there's some flat roof designs in this neighborhood. We understand the neighborhood's predominantly hip or ridge roof styles, but the flat roof to us seemed to fit with the 50s era. And as well, it accomplished another goal. A lot of people felt the house was too tall and too massive, and going with the flat roof really helped us to reduce the height and reduce the mass. Additionally, we really took efforts to reduce the size of the second floor. The second floor, the presence of the second floor got a lot of attention. So we've stripped out, as much area as we could, and still really held with our goal of having, the family's bedrooms. We have us and our 2 kids, so we'd like all the sleeping areas to be on the same floor. We reduced all the rooms. We stepped them back, and we've rearranged it and shifted mass away from our neighbors at 26 to try and create some more separation on the second floor. Yeah, additionally over here, I think it would take too long if I went through every single update. We got criticism about our balconies, so we've reduced and eliminated those where we could. The presence of this second floor balcony here in the master suite is obviously of a concern to our neighbors on Tamalpais to the rear and southwest of the property. We've tried to address their concerns with vegetation. There's potentially a very nice view of Mount Tam facing west of this property, and we'd like to take advantage of that with this construction. Some of the other commentary we got at the last study session from our adjacent neighbors was they wanted to see their homes in relation to ours. Our first plans didn't do that. So we took some time to as-built their sites and try and show the arrangement of the properties as if when our house is constructed. We also added a street perspective to help see the mass of the new house and the stepping and wall articulation that we added. So, hopefully this additional information, these modifications can help everyone better understand the project. Looking here at the garage, we heard concerns that a 3-car garage was out of place and unnecessary in our neighborhood. So we've reduced it in width to a 2-car. We shifted some of the area to the rear to provide storage. We've lowered the height of the garage in keeping with the style of the house. We've gone with a flat roof similar to the house. And actually, I think almost all the detached garages in the neighborhood share this flat roof style. Incidentally, I think a couple of our neighbors have recently, and in the last study session, raised concerns that they think it would be converted to an ADU or some other use. I would just offer our trust that if an ADU was in our plans, it would be on these plans. We don't intend to build an ADU here. I don't know what else I can do to address their concerns there, but just wanted to bring that point up. I saw it get added to some of the late messaging. I'm happy to answer any other questions. We might take the whole evening if I go through our entire set of revisions. I'll show our landscaping sketches here. We're proposing a row of Saratoga laurels along the back edge of the property between the sewer pump district and our neighbors at Tamalpais. They've expressed a lot of concerns with our home design and views and privacy, and we totally share those concerns. We don't want to look into their yard any more than they don't want to look into ours, or vice versa. So we've drawn up this proposal for a dense hedge. These seem to be a very applicable planting. Additionally, I had a conversation with the neighbor, John O'Donnell, and my wife. We met with them a few weeks ago discussing the property line here. So I've got some notes that we're going to add to our proposal if everyone's agreeable to add some hedging to the front property line and possibly extend the existing fence, which is currently set back pretty far as we're proposing a driveway here. My dad's available as well to answer any questions. I think just in the instance of respecting everyone's time, I may just give it back to the commission if they want to ask us any specific questions or clarifications. Spent a lot of time trying to get all this feedback in here, and we definitely want to hear everyone's input and thoughts and comments and criticisms so we can get this design right and get our house going and built. So with that, I turn it back to Phil and the commission.
Okay. Thank you for making opening statement there for this. Phil, do you have anything else you want to add from a staff perspective after listening to Mr. Sales? Is there anything that you'd want to add?
No, just want to add and just reiterate that, there are some late comments that came in, and if the commission wishes to look at those on the website, now or after the meeting, just to make sure you have all the public comment. Though I think some of the public comment that was written, I think some of those folks are also currently attendees. But I have no further introduction of this project.
All right, so, even though this is not a formal item and it's a study session, we'll conduct it much like we would, and we'll ask commissioners to ask the applicant questions. And then we will open it up for public comment, and then we'll bring it back to discuss. So that said, any questions for the applicant? I'll start with you, Mr. Rizzo.
Hi, I've got a question. Could you refresh my memory about the building, the accessory building in the back, and the use? Is someone a woodworker? Is there a wood shop, or what's the use of that building?
Yeah, I can. I'm a handy guy, and it's not a shop. It's just storage. Our first, this is just a miscommunication between us and our architect, my dad. It's just kind of a drafting foible. It's not a shop. It's just storage. We'll want space for 2 cars. Was I not sharing?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I was scrolling through the plans that whole time, and I'm sorry. I'm just so green at this whole thing. It looked like I was going through the plans the whole time, but I think I'm sharing now.
Yes,
and here's the garage. I'll pull up one of the elevations I had up earlier. My apologies. So we've changed the garage here to a 2-car wide. We've moved some storage space to the rear. The uses, we're outdoors people. We have lots of camping gear. We're the Boy Scouts. We're fishermen. Crab fishing. I have 2 sets of crab traps now because they changed the regulations this year. We just, currently we have a garage full of stuff and 2 sheds at the house we're renting. So it's just a hobbyist's space, bikes, skis, stuff like that.
Have you been able to go to the neighbor's house to see if there's any? I know you had a 6-foot fence between you. I'm assuming it. That view of Mount Tam, is that going to be of a consequence to this design? Putting a shed in the back seems like that's the primary view everybody wants. Is that something that you have explored, like been on the neighbor's house and looked at the story poles?
So we haven't done story poles yet. We're planning on doing that with our application. Is your question, are we, can you clarify the question? Are we? Yeah,
I'm wondering if even with the old story poles, it doesn't seem like it's that much taller. Were you able to see, was this structure obstructing the neighbor's view to the south of Mount Tam?
Our opinion is that in our walking through the neighborhood, walking through the yard, we don't think this structure is going to impede any views of Mount Tam. Other people have, I think, maybe expressed concern about that. My honest impression is that it doesn't. It's at the outside end of a street corner, and I don't think there's going to be views of Mount Tam obstructed.
And we have walked in both of the backyards. Both of our neighbors, invited us in. We talked with them and looked, at their concerns. I think they're on, so maybe they can correct me if we're wrong. But I don't think where the garage is, you can see Mount Tam. But again, I could be corrected. I don't remember seeing that when we were there.
And part of the reduction in height of the garage was, in listening to John O'Donnell's concerns about, maintaining view across the back of our lot. Conversely, also on the same subject, when I met with him a few weeks ago when we walked through their backyard. He expressed some, appreciation that we'd reduce the garage, and we actually talked about moving it back further. We're kind of up against a lot coverage zoning ordinance about how much accessory structure can be in the rear setback. But if that's a direction that the commission thinks is agreeable, we could obviously research it. By pushing the garage back, that kind of widens this view corridor. Let me see if I can highlight it. I don't know. Right through here.
Yeah.
Hopefully that
Yeah.
answers
I
your
understand.
question.
Yeah,
That was all I had. Thank you.
all right. Commissioner Vandell, do you have any questions you'd like to ask the prospective applicant?
I don't have any questions. When you say it might or might not obstruct a view, I'm wondering, is that just an expression you're using, or you're sure that it will?
I can clarify that I don't think it does.
Okay, so you don't think, but I guess I want to know, does it or doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, from our yard, from 24 Mohawk, we cannot see Mount Tam. There's no view of Mount Tam. The 22 Mohawk, when we were back in their yard talking with John, I believe John's on, so maybe he can clarify this. I did not see a view of Mount Tam. It was kind of foggy that day. The rain was about to start, so it could have been obstructed by the fog.
I think if there was a view, and same with our backyard at head height, if there was a view, it potentially has been obstructed by some, like I think acacias or eucalyptus that are kind of growing wild in the parkland. So there's some trees here adjacent to the office building, and if you guys can see this Google Earth image I have, and then by the bridge over the canal, there's
We can't
other.
see it.
We can't.
No.
No, you need to stop your share or change your share.
Okay, hold on. Stop. Share screen.
While you're doing that, Spencer, I could just pipe in. One possibility is to put up a couple story poles for the proposed garage. So if that comes to that point, and that could answer some of the commissioner's questions.
Yeah, I agree. Or
I got you.
so there's a lot of trees there, and from our backyard, we can't see Mount Tam. Sean and Stacy to the right at 26 have said that they do and did have a view prior to the growth of these trees. So I think that's the extent of the conversations that we've had with either of our side neighbors about view of Tam.
I don't have anything else, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bundy. Bob, you're muted.
I can appreciate the difficulty you're having, with this. You're at a disadvantage in that because it is a tear down, you've got to start with a much higher elevation. And from the plans that you've done a nice job of camouflaging the front yard and that sort of sense that you see in some houses, especially in my neighborhood that have been elevated, of not having the right landscaping to really work into that. You're also on this, while it's a large lot, it's pie-shaped and it's narrow at the front. So putting the house where it currently is really makes it look so much bigger, and it is, than the immediate neighbors. And I wondered if you had thought about trying to just move the house back some, or was that creating problems for your neighbors, since it is a tear down and you have the ability to move it around?
So we've thought about it and we are open to it. We've designed the house to be generally in the footprint where it was and matching, holding the front tight to the front setback. It actually the current house encroaches into the front setback. It was built that way from the original development. And so we've tried to match that as, from our perspective, all the other houses in the neighborhood, orient to the front setback. Understanding that this house is larger than the houses originally built in the neighborhood because it has 2 stories and because it's on a 5-foot tall floodplain foundation, we are perfectly willing to move it around and, hear what the neighbors or the commission think would be the best solution for everyone. I think shifting it back a few feet in one or there's a couple different lines in which that could work, and we're open to reviewing that.
Anything else, Dr. Bundy? I don't know where Bob is. Let's see, he's muted. Bob, you're muted.
Came back. You referenced some of the other flat roofs in the neighborhoods, and while I think yours is a very good example, mid-century postmodern with the flat roof, it's sort of much different than the other homes in the neighborhood, and the ones that really have the flat roofs are sort of entry-level homes that were very inexpensive when they were built, just really the same as in my neighborhood in Mariner Cove. And I wondered if you had talked to the neighbors about a hipped roof on the upper level that would blend in more with other homes in the neighborhood, even if you had to get a variance on the roof height. I could support that if the neighbors were also supportive of that.
It's a very good question. Obviously, the flat roof was done for one reason, to reduce the height and the volume. We are open to hearing if there's a consensus in the community, on the commission, that a different roof style is more appropriate. We kind of took inspiration from flat roof mid-century design in trying to implement this idea and strategy. We kind of shifted it over to our carport and then created a couple more roof lines in the back around the deck and the privacy screen to try and build on those elements. But if that's not the right look, we can hear it. It's just that height was stressed over and over in the previous study session, height, massing, and in addition to character of the neighborhood. And we're trying to, address as many issues as we can.
And shading too.
And shading was another concern for Sean and Stacy. So it's a challenge, and we're open to whatever the consensus is. Honestly, we want to fit in, and we don't want to stand out unnecessarily. But the house also needs to work for us, and so we're balancing a lot of needs here.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Metcalf, do you have any questions for these gentlemen?
She's muted.
She might be muted.
She is muted.
You're muted, Phyllis.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, I want to follow through on what Bob was saying, because it was part of my notes. I would like to see the house shifted back. And I think you could do it if you would go to your previous slide.
The site plan?
Yes.
Okay. Here, does this work, or maybe the other?
That's fine.
Yeah.
You're on this curve.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than a straight line of the street. And I think that would allow you to put the house back several feet, because you said you were concerned about being in line with the other homes. The fact that it's a curve, I think it would work. I like
Yeah.
the mid-century modern look. And I think the flat roof works with your style.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have some questions I wanted to ask based on this memo you sent to Phil on the 27th, when you kind of gave an update on the community outreach.
Uh-huh.
You know the one we, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of it I want explained. I'm just going to go in the order you put it. You know, Stacy Prince at 26 emailed back concern regarding the level of modifications and if it was a complete design as she understood the commission meeting asked for. She also indicated sometimes that would work for her and Sean. What is she? I don't understand what her concerns are.
Unfortunately, we're in the same level of understanding. We were unable to meet with her. We met with Sean. She was at work, and we've asked if she can clarify that. Okay. We haven't heard any other feedback other than
so
redesign.
She's not saying for a complete redesign. She just wants an explanation of modifications, maybe.
I think she's on. She can probably clarify this.
The other one is on, this is the next page. John, I don't see a last name.
Probably John O'Donnell.
Yes, yeah, it's not in this, yeah. His big concern, okay, let's see, was we're still not thrilled with cars driving back into the garage. And then you're talking about moving a fence and landscaping, and I'm wondering how that is going to alleviate his concern about cars driving the whole length of the property into the garage. Have you discussed this any further with him?
We had that conversation on the Saturday in October, and it was a follow-up to concerns that he raised during the first study session. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. John's concern since we first met with them back in April has been that he didn't like the idea of the detached garage. It is, in our analysis of this site, it's really the best way for us to park this site and build our house. So it's been a source of tension. We're friendly with each other, but he can elaborate more. But so his points have been about, well, if you have to have the garage, I'd like to see it move back so I don't have to look at it as much.
So he wants it behind the house rather than to the side of it that you see.
We'll shift it back. So if I could maybe draw, get an arrow. The conversation I had with John in October was, can we move it back, more? So he doesn't have to look at it as much from his backyard, over here where this clouded comment is.
So he wants it towards your rear property line.
Yeah.
He is not asking for you to move it to the right.
No, it was to shift it back.
Okay.
I think he was appreciative of that we've taken the shed roof off and lowered it because he had concerns about his sight line across the top of it. And then further that conversation.
Talking about the cars driving back and forth, that's noise.
Yeah, he didn't warm initially to the idea of having the driveway extend to the rear of the lot.
And yet he wanted it moved back further.
Yeah, he can obviously explain his
current
position more. And then just in that same conversation, I brought up, let's look at moving the fence, because just the way this existing fence is, it's set back pretty far. There's a lot of front yard that's kind of shared between the two, your garbage cans and pathways to the backyard. So I proposed, because it's going to, in our design, be a driveway here, I proposed moving the fence forward as to whatever the city standard is, and then reinstalling the gate so that he has some separation from our, future driveway. And then additionally, including a hedge here to kind of provide delineation between the lots.
Would the hedge extend all the way back to the side of the garage? I can't see the way, there.
I think just to wherever the fence, I think the hedge would be a low hedge, one of those like 2 or 3 foot tall ones that just kind of provide just a delineation of space. And then it would probably stop at the gate here. Sorry, I did this with sketches. I apologize for the crudeness.
Looking at your slide here, the fence ends at the end of this red line. Where your arrow is, that is the end of the fence.
It's currently here, closer to the back of their house. And I'm proposing to extend it to whatever the front setback allows.
Okay. What about extending it all the way to the garage?
There's existing fence all along.
Okay,
from
there is.
Here,
right.
back is existing. And then there's like a gate about here. Maybe I could pull up our survey. And it might, there we can see the survey. So, so it's just oriented differently, but here's John and the O'Donnell house here on the lower right. Here's the existing house, and the existing fence stops here, kind of towards the rear of both houses. So this is just open, shared grass, pathways, garbage cans.
Yeah.
And in the event of building this driveway here, I would offer to extend the fence as far forward as mutually agreeable.
Okay, I see. And then the last one, and I think you're as confused on this as I am, from Rose, Tim and Mercedes Rose. And they question the 3 upstairs decks, front, right, and rear. And you said you removed the front deck. You never had a deck on the right. And then you go, and this is, I don't know if you misstated something here. Their major concern is the upstairs rear facing deck will have line of sight into our entire backyard. Is it their backyard that they're concerned about rather than your backyard?
Yes, the way I understand, unfortunately, I've never met with them at their home. We've proposed to meet with them a couple times to go over their concern, and they've declined. Which is unfortunate, but
But I think their concern is our second story deck looking into their yard and looking into their house. I'm pretty sure that's what their concern is.
So
we interpreted their
it should be there in that sentence.
That might be a typo, yeah.
I think what I was saying was our collective view, and all I was, I think, talking about is, our backyards kind of face each other. So if you have a view of our yard, we have a view of your yard. It's a mutual concern that neither one of us wants to look into each other's house.
Of course. Okay. Those are all the questions I have now. I'd like to hear from the public, and I might get some more questions then, Peter.
Yeah. Okay. Did I miss anybody in the group? I don't think so. I think I got everybody. So, yeah, I'm not going to ask any questions. I think that we've asked many questions of you at this point. So let us open this up to public comment. So I'm going to put a timer on my phone right here for 3 minutes. And if you have a comment, you can raise your hand, and we will call upon you. I think we will let you in. I see that John
There are
Wester.
several hands up. We have Cleona O'Donnell. We'll start with you and then followed by Sean Westerhoff. So go ahead, Cleona. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. You will need to unmute yourself.
And this is John, her husband. First of all, the garage, which is 660 square feet. I don't like where it is. I think it's a terrible idea. It's in the backyard. It does block our view. I showed both of them that Saturday, the view I had, where their garage was proposed. And And then I said, it blocks our view of Mount Tam. I said that about 10 times to them. Then I suggested, why don't they move it to the side of their house? Instead of the garage to the side of their house, instead of way back in the backyard. So I don't know why they have to have it in the backyard when they can add it to the side of their house. Just bring it up to the house. So it blocks our view. It's a huge garage and it can be built at the side of their house instead of in our backyard. Anything else? I'm going to hand it up to Cleena now.
Okay. So the fence that you propose, I understand why you're saying you put the fence there, and unfortunately I wasn't able to see you guys when you were talking to John. But it seems like it's going to come down and block our kitchen window so that we'll be looking out at a fence from our kitchen window. And when you're talking about the flat roof, when we were building on 16 years ago, the neighborhood were trying to get rid of the flat roofs, and they actually made us put a peaked roof on so that we wouldn't have a flat roof anymore. As John was saying, you know, we do have a view of Mount Tam from our backyard. We know there are trees there, but we still have a view, and we love that view. We have a window in our kitchen with a nice view of Mount Tam from there too. And even though you've lowered the garage, it would still impede our view of Mount Tam. And it'd still be 4 feet above our fence line. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Tracy, who's next?
I lost Sean. Sean, did you want to talk? I saw your hand come down.
Yeah, no, I was just fiddling to try to figure out how to unmute there. So thanks again to all of you to spend the time with us. This is really valuable. And we've really appreciated hearing all these points of view. I think for us, a lot of our original concerns remain. And you know, we empathize with the situation of trying to have something that's going to work for the family, work for the neighbors, and have this visual appeal. But still, you know, sort of starting from the top, we're pretty concerned about the mass. You know, some of the renderings were pretty distorted on how this actually would look from Mohawk. And we still have a lot of concerns about shade and privacy. So we just essentially wanted to reiterate some of those same concerns, but don't want to rehash unnecessarily for everybody's time. Phyllis, I did want to just respond quickly to what Stacy had said. You know, at the close of the last study session, we got a clear indication, at least that was our impression from the commission, and it was stated that, you know, we really needed to look at this property and this project with a clean slate. And I got that message. I was very encouraged by it. And I felt that when I saw the renderings come, and I talked with Spencer and Britt, that we didn't achieve that, and that there wasn't really a, in my view and in Stacy's view, taking that to heart to really create something different and new, but rather to modify an existing design that was pretty uniformly criticized. So that was, Phyllis, the reasoning behind Stacy's comments, or really in response to the commission. So thank you again. Appreciate the time and effort to get this out in public.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Then we have Mr. Rose.
Go ahead, Mr. Rose, and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate everybody's time as well. I put together just some notes, and I think I just prefer to read it. I did submit it in earlier, but So my wife and I are attending this meeting to reiterate our concerns regarding the 24 Mohawk residential project. I'm sorry, just to recap. So we are the neighbors on the southern side across the fence, both my wife, Mercedes, and I. So as far as we can see, the second proposal shows very modest modifications of the first. So at the conclusion of the initial study session, the commission encouraged the sales to start over and reimagine the project, similar to what Sean was just mentioning. So we still do have a series of concerns. I could just briefly touch on them. For one is the scale, the design and style of the proposed structure. It's such a large second story building. There's still remaining 2 balconies, one of which still overlooks our backyard. Just to reiterate the previous discussion. So, we have no view of their backyard. I mean, this is really their second story that looks directly into our backyard, as well as the main living space of our home. So we were a little disappointed to see that was still in the plans. Yeah, I mean, this alone can affect the value of the surrounding properties. Also, the structure obstructs the view of the landscape, the mountain range, and the skyline. Placing extensive landscape, in between the properties. It may, be a way to be able to protect the line of sight. However, it's still skylight, that we are not able to see. It's also not a permanent solution. Who knows, how long that's going to be there for. So as far as, the structure obstructing direct and indirect lighting surrounding other residencies, I know some of our other neighbors are thinking about, solar access. It's still a very, very tall building. It's very dominant, it's conspicuous, it's disproportionate to the surrounding residential structures. Even the style, it impacts the character of the community, despite the change in the roof style. It's inconsistent and still inharmonious with the surrounding homes and the overall townscape. So given the size of the property, with respect to the residential building codes, I'm kind of surprised that there aren't more options for them to build either a single story or at least reduce the second story to a more modest size, reducing the footprint. But on a personal note, just in closing, designing this forever home, it's an opportunity for the community, to build relationships, and I find that as this continues, it's creating a little bit of animosity and stress amongst all of us in our in our busy households. Both my wife and I work full time. We're raising kids. It's hard to find time to meet with them. It's not that we're opposed to it. I don't want them to think that we're refusing to meet with them. I'm thinking that once there's some designs and there's some points that are addressed and our concerns are addressed, we'd love to have them over and meet with them and discuss further. So that's really all I'd like to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Tor White, we have. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready for you. I'm at 526, next door to Tim Rose. The points I'd like to make is relative to views. This becomes my view. So from my backyard, I will now have something lifting up into the view that I now enjoy, and that's a big concern. One of the things that I note is if this was not in a floodplain, the height that is being considered would be equivalent to a 3-story property. So it really does lift up with that 5-foot lift. And that's where when I heard the previous person talking about a 6-year plan where you can develop part of the property, keep it off the lifted foundation, and then come back and add more later. I would love to see them consider something like that. The home floor plan sounds like it's possibly 4.5 times mine. I think it's great that someone wants to have plenty of space, but it's just in an area that we're really not designed for the mega mansions. The garage being pretty much equivalent to my house, less my kitchen. So it is extensive, and then being as far back and close to my property line, I'm not a fan of that, and I'd love to see it incorporated into the structure itself. And that does remove it from my neighbor John behind me, his sight line. So even if it was to be a 1-story complete rebuild with a 5-foot lift, I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but I would understand what their objectives are. And even though it does have an impact on neighbors, it's a lot easier to manage. The impact with sight lines and things like that, and people looking over existing fence lines with foliage and things like that. So I would be more accepting of a single level. But yeah, a two-story on a 5-foot platform with high roof, high ceilings is just a recipe for disaster from the impact on me. And that's really all I have to say on that. And I would love to see a design on 1 floor. And if 2 stories is something that's desired, across the freeway, they said they have great modern homes that are 2 stories that take out all the anxiety that's created with something like this, and probably just as affordable just to have a ready-built home. So thank you for my input.
Thank you. Okay,
We have Nancy L. followed by, it says Sean again, but it's actually Stacy Westerhoff that's on that. Nancy, go ahead when you're ready. You want me to unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Nancy Lay. I'm at 28 Mohawk. And one of my first questions is the carport now looks to me to be somewhat of a sort of a garage. And so I'm curious how you actually access the rear garage and shop. I don't actually see what looks like a driveway, or if a car is parked in the carport / attached garage, how you get to the rear garage and shop.
so do you have any other commentary, Nancy?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, why don't you go with that, and then we'll let.
Okay, and then I'd also like to ask that in the future, that the format not be in a sketch, because it's been very difficult to actually make heads or tails really of what I'm looking at and get a good sense of scale. And I think that there's some areas where it appears that the rear garage and shop are over the rear setback, and I may have misread that on the plans, but I don't think there's reason for a lot of this size to be going over any setbacks, and in fact should probably be somewhat pulled further away from any of the setbacks. One of the commissioners also commented about having the house be further back from the street, and I think that would be very helpful in reducing the looming kind of the scale of the house, and not have it feel so imposing. So I'd like to request that they take a look at that as well. And I do feel that in any way, if the height can be reduced further on the house, perhaps by reducing the heights, the ceiling plate heights for each story, that would be helpful. And I continue to feel that the house is too big for and imposing for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm not sure that I think I would agree with some of the other comments that perhaps that
You're out of time.
okay, that the sales did not do as requested in terms of a reimagination.
Okay. Thank you.
Peter, did you want? me to go to Stacy Westerhoff?
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Hi,
when you're ready.
everybody. Thank you so much for this evening and for the communication about all of this. I know it's a tricky subject, and I want to say, just in response to the sales, that I did everything I could to try to meet with you all, but my schedule has been relentless, and so apologies for not being there when you met with Sean. That said, I just wanted to add a few comments. I feel like this neighborhood isn't built for houses of the size they're proposing. And so we like the idea that they made these sort of modifications, again, to reiterate what Sean said about them not really sort of reimagining it as proposed by you all. I keep coming back to that it just looms over the surrounding homes, including ours. We're at 26. I think some of the sketches are misleading. There's one that's actually not accurate in terms of height scale. The one rendering that shows 22 and 26 Mohawk, there is, that one rendering, and I do think that I think it's page 140, the image on 140. Anyway, I do think that you can just see how sort of overwhelming it is to those of us that are around it. I guess I understand that they have needs for their family, and simultaneous, I'm trying to see how it fits with our neighborhood and the scope and scale and size of our community and sort of this end of the community. So I understand that there are other parts of Corte Madera that have larger homes and sort of in general larger homes, but our end of the community does not. And so we have, I think we believe in upgrades and modifications and making something that really is helpful to our neighborhood, and yet can't quite get behind the scope and scale of this. And still, as Sean said, concerns about privacy and so forth. I appreciate that they did get rid of some of those decking, areas and so forth that would look directly into our yard. But with the elevation, because of FEMA, it really does propose this very challenging amount of shade and additional privacy issues in our home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any email commentary, Tracy, that has come in, public comment at tcmmail.org?
No, Chair Chase.
Okay. So we've heard from a number of people, and I think we will now close the public comment section of this. We'll bring it back to the commission to talk about it. We're not going to pass a resolution or not pass a resolution on this. This is all about feedback to you directly from the public and from the commission. So there's a lot to unpack here, and in the interest of brevity and time, I'll ask each commissioner to be as concise as they can in their expression. So starting with you, Mr. Rizzo, what would you say to the applicant about what you're thinking and feeling?
First of all, I do think that there were some changes that were definitely positive from the last presentation, as far as trying to bring down the mass significantly in a height. There's not much more they can do to bring that height down with starting with 5 feet above the grade. I do feel that there could be an opportunity to make the building a little bit more narrow and possibly integrate that garage onto the side of the house, which might help set back the house even further from the neighbors. I think, that a few years ago, 38 Lakeshore was of a similar style that was approved, and that was approved at 28.9, and they raised their house above the floodplain, and this project is almost 3 feet lower than that one. we are going to come across several of these projects in the next few years with people trying to do significant remodels and rebuilding their homes. But I do think the sales have a lot to work with, and to try to maybe reorganize the house so the upper floor maybe even a little bit smaller and set back even a little bit further. Maybe utilize some of the depth of the lot to increase, some of the, I should say, decrease the feeling of a massive structure. But it's always going to feel bigger than those two houses next to it, just because you've got slab on grades. Looks like you're not even, I don't even know if the two houses next door are 30 inches off the ground. I think that there could be 6-7 inches off the ground. So you're really starting at a disadvantage as far as looking at the neighboring properties. Even if this was a single story with a high pitched roof, it would seem not completely in tune with the two next door neighboring properties, just because of the way these houses were built back in the 50s with these low pitched roofs and low foundations. I do appreciate that the house's square footage decreased a little bit to break up some of the volumes. But I definitely think that, utilizing a little bit more of the lot, maybe kind of look at a solution, bringing that garage onto the side as a part of the house might help the neighborhood come together a little bit more and accept the design as part of. I just think it's going to be super hard to build any two-story with a 5-foot finished floor and make it feel like it's exactly the same scale and size of the two neighboring properties. But I do and encourage the sales to use, to bring their house up out of the FEMA flood zone, because we are going to have a problem, and you guys do have a creek right behind you. And to protect your investment, it's what's going to happen in the future. And I do agree with Commissioner Bundy that having a little forecourt area with some landscaping does help bring down the mass of that first few steps. And 5 feet is, that's 8 steps up to the top. So it's a lot of steps before you can get to a building that you're able to inhabit. But I think I would encourage the applicants to really take a look at the general plan's findings 1, 4, and 6, which deals with the site massing siting and being harmonious with the neighborhood, which I think is obviously going to be very hard to emulate exactly what can be harmonious in the neighborhood. But I just bring 38 Lakeshore up because I think it's of the style of the neighborhood, and it was approved, and what they're proposing is a little bit smaller. Shorter, less tall, but it does have a larger upper floor. So maybe working with the upper floor to make it a little bit smaller and set back a little further might help the neighbors digest this design. So with that said, that's what I have to say.
Well, that's well put, Jim. Thank you. Dr. Bundy.
In reflecting on the first design and on this design, I really think they're both very nice designs from the standpoint of the style and how they're put together. Architecturally, I think they look very nice. I'm really having trouble seeing them on this lot with the neighbors in such close proximity. And I think the things that James mentioned as far as stepping back the second floor and trying to move the whole structure further back on the property would be good. The garage issue, maybe it is going to be a problem for some of the neighbors. We'll have a better sense of that when story poles are up. But I sort of congratulate them on trying to get at least a 2-car garage to keep more vehicles off the street than a lot of us see in our neighborhoods, because people use their garages for other purposes, or can't seem to find a place to put those in. So I would really want to think, as James said, to think about reducing some of the mass of the second story, moving this further back, which I think would soften the look from the street, and working on a style, perhaps with a different roof style that would fit in with the neighborhood at this point. So those are my thoughts.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Margaret Vandell.
Well, I think that actually this new design is a huge improvement in my mind. As far as the look of the building and the way it works in the neighborhood, I realize that neighbors might not want a two-story building, and I took a ride over there and looked at that area specifically during the weekend, and the comment was right. That particular area of Corte Madera doesn't have a lot of two-story houses, but I think as more young families are moving in and people want to change the houses because there is a very old look to that area. Two-story houses are pretty much, we've talked about it, the way to increase living space for families moving in. It's not exactly what's in the neighborhood now, that specific small area, but in that whole Madera Gardens area, there are quite a few two-story houses. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing more and more. I congratulate the family on wanting to get the house above the floodplain. I think that's a great improvement. And every house that goes above the floodplain is going to be a plus for Corte Madera. So it may not be exactly the look, but I think they've done a great job of it. The only, I think it could be, the second story could be a little smaller. I agree with that. It could be set back. I guess I'd need to see other drawings of it. The one thing I would like to see, and maybe Phil could do some pictures of it, I'd like to see, the O'Donnell said that their view of Mount Tam would be blocked. And I guess I'd like to see what their view of Mount Tam is now and kind of get a better idea of how it would be blocked, because the applicants didn't seem to think that was going to be a problem. And if it's going to be a problem, that's difficult to deal with for the people. But I think this is an improvement, and I like it. I do have an issue. There was a question that was raised about the carport and how it works with the garage, and is there a way to get to it? And I guess I had that question also, but maybe when the drawings are more detailed, I'll understand it better.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Margaret. Moving on to Phyllis. Like to hear your commentary.
Okay. I think this house, this drawing is a big improvement. And I think it's an attractive house. It's just at the wrong site. That is the problem. The design does not work with the other homes in the neighborhood, whether they're one story or two story. And I happen to prefer mid-century modern architecture. I'd like to talk a little bit about the carport. I think they ought to get rid of it and put the garage there. If they move the house back, and it's a pie-shaped lot, they're going to have more space, and they would be able to have the garage in line. I mean, having the carport and the garage, I don't think it's necessary. And it's kind of like wearing a belt and suspenders. The top should be made smaller. But I think a lot of it has to do with moving it back, if that's where it's going to be. I think the sales now are probably thinking about maybe we should have looked more at the neighborhood before we bought the lot, the house on that lot. Maybe they picked the wrong location. As I say, it's a good looking house that just doesn't fit in with the neighborhood, 1-story or 2-story. And you want some cohesiveness and nexus. I mean, we spoke about this on the previous home we looked at. Looking at it, I don't see how it's going to work in the neighborhood. I just, doesn't make any difference whether I like the style or the sales like the style. If it isn't working in the neighborhood, it's not going to look right. And I mean, we've seen this in Marin County in the Larkspur Marina with all those modern houses. There's a beautiful New England colonial house. It sticks out like a sore thumb and doesn't work. This is how this house will look in this neighborhood. So my advice would be, if this is where you want to be, try to redesign the facade to fit in more with the other homes in the neighborhood and still move it back, get rid of the carport, move the garage as to the side of the house as an extension of the house. And that's about it for now. I think I've taken apart just about everything. I apologize, but it just doesn't work. That's it, Peter.
Thank you, Phyllis. I think that you've heard from everybody that I would summarize with those comments as well. I think that you guys did make substantial improvements in the design, and it's an attractive design. I grant you that. It is awfully difficult to have it that far forward on the lot because it really looms large next to those other houses on either side. If it were conceivable to move it back on the property, I think you would go a long ways toward appeasing some of the problems. The quick math on this property is that the current house is between 11 and 12% of the lot coverage right now, and you're proposing somewhere around 31% of the lot coverage. Both of those are substantially below what that lot should support. So you could find a way to move that back and still get what you need and shape shift the house to be less of an impact to the neighbors. You're never going to appease everybody, but I think that there would be less obstreperous reaction to the house at this point. So if we were to try and summarize, there would be a series of bullet points that have something to do with moving the house back, working with the carport. Do you feel like you've gotten enough feedback from everybody?
There's a lot of feedback. Clearly, we have a lot to talk about. I don't know if it's a good time to answer specific questions.
Sure,
I'll just ask my dad if he's got any questions he wants feedback on. Sorry, I didn't hand you the mic at all, Alan, but we were trying to be cognizant of time.
The site plan.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Alan, you're muted. You got to click the microphone thing.
We just talking about how we get to the garage.
Okay, so I think a lot of comments came back on the garage, so I would like to just clarify some of those questions. This site plan shows our driveway. The idea of the vision is that you would either go under the carport, use the garage, and or exit the driveway to the side here. A lot of commentary about our garage and carport. The challenge with this site, we would have to set this house back pretty far in order to get 2 wide cars to be able to park without cutting off the front property lines. So that's a challenge that we tried to work around by doing the detached rear garage. I don't know if it's one we can solve and find a house that we like. If you look here at the neighbor's house, they dealt with the same problem in the original development by encroaching over our corner to clear their garage, and the same kind of geometries at play here. Whereas a 2 wide car garage would have to be, you know, almost where the back of the house is now, or a very narrow front of a house. So it was obviously a very challenging design element that we thought we had found a solution for. See if my dad's got access, but
can you hear
don't
me
need to
now?
address any other questions. Sorry, Peter. Kind of ran away.
Alan now has his voice.
Okay, yeah, I think Spencer really covered everything from my perspective. A lot of good feedback. Again, I will see if we can take it to the next level. I like the idea of moving the house back. I can work with bringing the garage forward and merging it into the carport. I think that does work. But, you know, we need to study it. Of course, it's nothing simple here. So we'll need to talk, but I think that the feedback was from the commissioners was great. You're right. I think we'll never be able to totally fit in the neighborhood, nor will anyone else. This was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home on a 11,000 square foot lot. And you can't add on to it. You can only replace it. If you replace it, you have to lift it. If the neighbors on both sides are not lifted, they will never blend. It has to stand out. There's just no, we can mitigate it, but we can't really change that fact. We're stuck with the elevation. The starting elevation for the first floor is going to make this house stand out no matter what we do. I think there are mitigations, and they were well mentioned, setting it back, stepping the upstairs even more. We'll take a look at all that, but it's not simple. Thank you.
Thank you for addressing those comments. Appreciate that. So applicants, do you feel like you have enough to take it back and consider this for a while?
Yeah, definitely a lot to chew on there.
Well, thank you for going through this. It was a lot to slog through, but I think that everybody gave you some solid feedback, and I'm glad to hear your response about the garages and so forth. At some point, photos and story polls will go a long ways toward explaining this not only to us, but to the neighbors as well. So that day will come, I hope, and it'll help explain the whole project. So that said, unless you have something else you want to ask of us, I would close out this item.
Nope, I think we're good. So
Yep.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks to everyone staying up late again. Sorry, we're always last.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
The office lights just went out at 10 p.m. where I am. I've got to turn the lights on. Hang on. So that said, now we have to vote if we're going to continue to 10:30. Commissioners, raise your hand if you're willing to go forward to 10:30.
Just finish this out.
Okay, we're in agreement. We'll go to 10:30. So,
Like the boys.
okay. So we've vanquished all of the applicants tonight. So anyway, we can move on to reports and so forth. The last meeting of the town council, November 16th, was a 2-inch thick binder. because it had the odds toolkit in it. I think that was probably the primary element of the paperweight in this volume. But I listened to that meeting, and Adam made a and then the council had a good discussion, a good healthy discussion about moving forward with the adoption of the odds toolkit. And they also adopted the isn't that going to a second reading for the urgency ordinance, I believe, for public property use. It was an interesting meeting when it came to the town council strategic planning workshop and discussion of the proposed work plan. So that was quite a document that they produced. I would recommend that anybody who's interested in what the town council and the staff are planning to do for 2022 to go back and read it. It's quite thorough and quite interesting, actually, to see where we're going to have to go. Park and Rec has come up a long ways, and they have new job classification, job description, and salary range for an attendant custodian. And then there was a discussion of department head salary schedule. So they're trying to level the department heads salaries across the board between Public Works, between Planning and Building, and between Park and Rec. I believe that covers the different departments that were discussed.
Finance, actually.
Oh, finance, that's right. Yeah, have to bring finance into this discussion as well. So, Adam, you would have a lot more to report on, I'm sure, right? And
Yeah, no, I think you covered most of it. I mean, so the odds will be was introduced by the town council. So the second reading will be heard next Tuesday. And if the council approves that, the toolkit will go into effect 30 days after that. So right after the new year, which is timed with the effective date of SB 9 as well. So there's some protections there for that bill, but there's still more. The council talked about more amendments, and staff talked about potentially coming back for some more, taking a harder look as we understand the bill more. There's still more information coming out about it, and potentially coming back with some more tweaks and modifications to it as time goes on. The second one was just the extension of the temporary outdoor use program, which was really intended to support local businesses and businesses that are still feeling the effects of COVID-19 and the preferences of customers, if not actually health mandates and orders. So that was extended through December 31st, 2022, with some direction to really, but the council would like to see staff come back with some more permanent ideas for and proposals for permanent, basically permanent ordinances or ordinances that would allow for permanent establishment of those outdoor uses. So that will be, it was also part of the work plan that Peter mentioned, was discussed at the last council meeting. And then certainly I'd like to just plug our next housing element workshop next Wednesday, December 8th. I think this is going to be a really, we're starting to move now into actually looking at sites for potentially designating as housing opportunity sites, or just talking about generally where housing development opportunities could be located in Corte Madera or should be located in Corte Madera. So we'll start I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion, high level, but wanting to get a lot of feedback from the community out where, or if they agree with some of staff's suggestions and where are there sites we're missing? Are there other locations we should be looking at? Things like that at our next workshop on the 8th. And so if you can, I would encourage others to come. I think, well, I mean, I would encourage you to encourage others to come if you have the opportunity. I think we're really going to start with, this is the start of really putting together the staff proposal or the town's proposal for meeting the requirements of the housing element and planning for the 725 units plus that we're going to have to do in the next year. So anyways, that's so I wanted to plug that. I guess we don't have any items, I'm trying to remember yet for the 14th, if I'm remembering. Oh, no, we do. I'm sorry, we do. We will have a meeting on December 14th will be our next item, next meeting. But clearly we're gonna cancel the second one in December and enjoy the holidays. And that's just a preview of the next month's calendar. So the other thing, obviously, you may have heard we released the CEQA document, the environmental document for public comment on the hotel, the Corte Madera Residence Inn proposal. So that is out for public review, and the tentative date for a public hearing is January 25th in front of the Planning Commission. And I just a note on that, the actual town council will be reviewing that project as well. So it will make its way from the Planning Commission to the town council. Not because of the hotel ordinance, but because it's actually in an overlay district, which requires the town council to approve that.
Okay. Phyllis, you had your hand up.
Yes. Two things I wanted to report as a commissioner. I've shared both of them with Adam. There is a resolution that is going to the cities and counties in California, taking a position on local control of zoning. And Mill Valley has already passed theirs. I sent all the information on to Adam to take up, I guess, with staff to see if they want to present it to the council. The other thing everybody should know, there is an initiative that will be on the ballot. I think it's November, maybe the June primary, on local control. It has passed through the AG's office. As far as the wording, it is now being circulated. I sent a copy on to Adam. People may be out at the shopping centers asking for signatures. I don't know. It can be found online and it could be signed. And this is signing it to get it on the ballot. And it's quite clear as to what the problem is and how to solve it. So I think we should all be aware of it. And I don't know, Adam, if you want to distribute what I sent to you to the other commissioners, or if you'd like me to do it.
I'd be happy to do that. I can do that.
Why don't you do it so it's coming from you and it's kind of more official type thing?
Just as an informational item. Yeah.
Yeah, for everybody to see so they're aware.
So what does it say exactly? What does it propose to say roughly?
Which one? The resolution or the initiative?
The initiative, yeah.
The initiative essentially says that the state should get out of local zoning and local planning and leave it to the towns, cities, and counties that are there in their communities. It's kind of like looking at teachers knowing best how to serve students because they have the hands-on. It's the same idea that there will be no more SB 9s, SB 10s, and Wiener says it's just the beginning that he's come up with, and McGuire's right along there with them. And this is what they're trying to stop, because eventually there will be no more single resident zoning.
Yeah.
and things like that. So I think it's very important that people look at it, whereas towns and cities have a responsibility for housing. There's no doubt about it. And they have to create housing. And they have to create all levels of housing and for all levels of income. But the state cannot be one size fits all. It doesn't work. And we're seeing more and more of this. And if you look at SB 9 and you look at SB 10, it doesn't talk about affordable housing. It talks about housing. And that's where, as I say, we know in our town what we need. And that doesn't mean that we don't do anything, but we do things that fit our town and our land and what the use of the land should be.
All right, I look forward to seeing that and seeing how they propose to combat the SB 9s and so forth. So, okay. With that said,
sorry. You want us to, so there, are we at the point of, we have tentative agenda item for the 14th. We talked, so let's talk about future agenda. Can I?
Yes.
So this, as our procedures call for, this is an item just to discuss with the commission whether it would like to put this proposed item on a future agenda. And it gives you know, us an opportunity as staff to just give you a sense of when we think as well it might be we might be able to do that if the commission so chooses. And so just in respect to that, you know, given the discussion around the last ADU project that was proposed, I think it was up on Deer Run. You know, I think it behooves staff to really present as much information as we can regarding the history regarding how the policy came to be and how it was adopted, and present a relatively thorough, complete sort of staff report and discussion, and set up the discussion in a way that provides all of you with the relevant background. So I would just say that obviously, if the commission, certainly if you want to put this item on, we're happy to do that. I would just request that, given everything else that we are doing at the moment related to other housing bills and laws and so on and so forth, that we do it at a time when we're sort of in the middle of the housing sort of, there'll be a point in time where we're done with the public workshops and we're into sort of drafting the document, and there'll be a little bit of a lull, sort of like toward the springtime of next year. And given the fact that, you know, I think we're not seeing a whole host of or sort of bombarded with 1,200 square foot proposals for ADUs, I don't know if it really has. Anyways, that's something to consider. But anyways, with that, I just wanted to see if that was something that, you know, now's the time for the commission to really discuss amongst themselves, whether this is something that you want to discuss as a group. And then if you know, we would bring it as a discussion item. And if there was a direction after that, it would really be a recommendation to the council for policy changes, or to have staff create some, basically put this on the work plan to change.
okay. I think we'd all be for that, but we'll, yeah, fit it in when you guys can best address it. Yeah, I hope so.
So is that, is it something that all the commissioners would like to see discussed? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And is that timing okay? I know really it was Commissioner Metcalf and Bendel. I you know, just sound like a reasonable time frame to bring that back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you'll know when, the staff has the time to put together all the information we need rather than do some, halfway job. Let's rather have it be
Yeah.
thorough at a later date than
And
do something fast
Okay, I
right away.
appreciate that. And also it's Martha who's, she helped develop the ordinances. I'd like her to be part of that and develop that. And I know we're just in the midst of a lot of other with the odds and the housing element and all that stuff. So, but all right, sounds good. We'll carry that forth for a future agenda item discussion.
Okay. We have minutes to adopt, but there's a notation from my perspective on these minutes, new hearings. Item 6A, it said the ayes were Bandel, Bundy, Chase, Metcalf, and Rizzo, but recused was Bundy. So we can't have him say yes if he's recused.
This was for 6A. Okay.
He's repeated. I see. Thank you.
Roll behind.
Anyone else have any other modifications before adoption of these notes? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve as noted?
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so here we go. We have one more meeting in December.
Yeah.
And then it's Merry Christmas. So thank you guys for all your efforts for this. This was a challenging meeting with two of these units, two of these homes that required a lot of discussion and, shall we say, discouraging news for the applicants, but they went back. So that was good effort on everybody's part, I thought.
yes, I agree.
So let's adjourn this meeting and say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Good night,
Thanks.
Grace.
Aye.